Some people say money is the root of all evil. In my experience, it's not the money itself, it's what the promise of it reveals about people. Take my cousins, for instance. One whisper of gold on Grandma Rose's property, and suddenly they couldn't get to the farm fast enough. I'm Hannah Mitchell, former city girl turned reluctant farmer, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew everything about my grandmother's farm. After all, I'd spent every summer there since I was 8, helping her tend the ancient apple orchard and learning the rhythms of country life. While my cousins, Jack, Marie, and Thomas, rolled their eyes at boring old Grandma Rose and her worthless dirt farm, I treasured every moment with her. She taught me everything: how to predict rain by watching the birds, how to coax stubborn apple trees into bearing fruit, and most importantly, how to listen to the land itself. "This farm has secrets, Hannah," she'd say, her blue eyes twinkling. "Some of them even I don't know yet." I always thought she was being poetic. Turns out she was being literal. The trouble started 3 days after her funeral. I was in her kitchen, surrounded by decades of memories and the smell of her favorite lavender sachets, when the door burst open. My 3 cousins swept in like they owned the place, which technically, they partly did. "Hannah." Jack nodded curtly. At 45, he was the oldest cousin and had appointed himself family spokesman. "We need to discuss the farm." I gestured to the kitchen table, the same one where Grandma had taught me to make her famous apple pies. They sat down, Marie immediately pulling out her tablet. "We've had an offer," she announced, her real estate agent persona in full swing. "Riverside Development wants to buy the entire property. They're planning a luxury housing community. The numbers are significant." She slid a document across the table. I glanced at the figure and felt my breath catch. It was more money than I'd ever seen. "We're all equal heirs," Thomas added, speaking for the first time. He was the youngest at 35, but ambition had aged him prematurely. "But we need unanimous agreement to sell. We're hoping you'll be reasonable about this." Reasonable. The word hit me like a slap, as if wanting to preserve our grandmother's legacy was somehow unreasonable. "The farm isn't for sale," I said quietly. "Don't be ridiculous," Jack scoffed. "Look at this place. The orchard's half dead, the buildings need massive repairs, and the equipment belongs in a museum. Grandma Rose let it fall apart because she was too stubborn to sell." "Or too senile," Marie muttered, not quite under her breath. I stood up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. "Get out." "Hannah, be sensible." Jack tried again. "You can't run this farm alone. You're a graphic designer, for God's sake. What do you know about agriculture?" "More than you'd think," I replied. "And I'm not selling." They left, but not before Marie dropped another bomb. "We filed a petition for partition sale. If you won't agree to sell voluntarily, we'll force it through the courts." After they left, I sat in Grandma's rocking chair, fighting back tears. They were right about one thing: the farm had seen better days. The last few years of Grandma's life had been hard. A drought had nearly killed the orchard, and repairs had been put off due to lack of funds. But there was something else, something that had been nagging at me since the funeral. Grandma's last words to me had been strange, almost cryptic. "Check the root cellar," she'd whisper from her hospital bed. "Behind the 3rd shelf. I left you everything you need to know." I'd been too grief-stricken to think about it at the time. But now, with the threat of losing the farm looming, her words came back with new urgency. The root cellar was cool and dark, smelling of earth and old potatoes. The shelves were mostly empty now, but I remembered them packed with preserves and root vegetables during my childhood summers. The 3rd shelf looked ordinary enough, but when I ran my hands along the back wall, I felt it: a loose board. Behind it was a small metal box, the kind used for cash or important documents. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. Inside was a leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed with age, and a set of coordinates written in Grandma's neat handwriting. The diary's first entry was dated 1945, written by my great-grandfather. "Found something in the North Field today. Robert Jenkins from the Geological Survey confirmed it. There's gold in them hills, as they say. But with the war just ended and food so scarce, I can't justify stopping farm production to mine it. Perhaps someday." My heart started racing as I read on. Subsequent entries detailed more geological surveys, all confirming the presence of a significant gold deposit under the North Field. But what really caught my attention were Grandma Rose's entries. starting from when she inherited the farm in 1975. The developers are circling again. They know about the gold, or suspect it at least. But this land is worth more than its minerals. The orchard my grandfather planted, the fields that fed this community through the Depression, the springs that never run dry. I won't be the one to destroy all that for a quick profit. I sat there in the dim light, pieces falling into place. The way she'd refused every offer to buy the farm, no matter how generous. Her insistence on teaching me every inch of the property, even her seeming neglect of the farm in recent years. It hadn't been neglect at all, but a clever disguise. My phone buzzed. A text from Jack. Our lawyer filed the partition papers today. You have 30 days to respond. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I looked at the coordinates in my hand, then back at the diary. Grandma had known this would happen. She prepared for it. The next morning, I called an old friend from college who worked in geological surveying. Hey Sam, I need a favor. How fast can you do a mineral survey of a property? Depends on the size, he said. What are we looking for? I smiled, thinking of my cousins' sneering faces. Oh, just a little family treasure. But I had no idea then just how deep this family secret went, or how far my cousins would go to get their hands on it. Grandma Rose's diary had only revealed the first layer of a mystery that would shake our family to its core. And as I would soon learn, gold wasn't the only thing hidden on this old farm. Sam arrived 3 days later with his survey equipment and a team of 2 assistants. I hadn't told him about the gold yet, just that I needed a complete geological survey for inheritance purposes. This is fascinating, he said on the second day, staring at his equipment readings. Hannah, are you sure your grandmother never mentioned anything unusual about the property? I handed him the diary and the coordinates. His eyes widened as he read. These coordinates, they match exactly with our findings. But Hannah, there's more. The gold deposit is significant, yes, but there's something else. He pointed to a different set of readings. See this? You're sitting on one of the largest freshwater aquifers in the state. In today's climate, that might be worth more than the gold. The pieces clicked together. More entries from Grandma's diary suddenly made sense. Her obsession with protecting the springs, her careful management of the water rights, her resistance to any development that might impact the groundwater. I was still processing this when a car roared up the driveway. Jack's Mercedes, kicking up dust on the dirt road Grandma had always refused to pave. What's going on here? He demanded, storming toward us. Marie and Thomas were right behind him. You can't authorize surveys without consulting all the owners. Actually, I can, I replied calmly. I'm the executor of the estate, remember? Grandma Rose named me in her will. About that will, Thomas cut in smoothly. We've been doing some research. Grandma changed her will 6 months before she died. She wasn't competent by then. Everyone knows that. Everyone. I raised an eyebrow. You mean the cousins who never visited? Who didn't know she was still driving her truck and managing her own books until the day she went into the hospital? Marie stepped forward, her lawyer mask firmly in place. We have witnesses who will testify to her mental decline. The new will won't hold up in court. You mean the will that makes me executor? I smiled, thinking of what else they didn't know. That will was signed and notarized 2 years ago, with her doctor present to certify her competency. But please, challenge it. I'm sure the court would be very interested in reading Grandma's diary. Diary? Jack's face went pale. What diary? I held up the leather-bound book, the one that details exactly why she never sold this farm. The one that explains about the gold deposit and the aquifer. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. You're lying, Thomas finally said, but his voice shook. There's no gold here. This is just a worthless old farm. Sam cleared his throat. Actually, my preliminary survey confirms the presence of a significant gold deposit, consistent with the geological reports from 1945. And as I was just telling Hannah, there's also a major aquifer. Shut up, Jack snapped. He turned to me, his face red with rage. You knew about this all along, didn't you? That's why you wouldn't sell. No, I said quietly. I just found out, but Grandma knew. She knew you'd try to sell as soon as she was gone. That's why she left me the diary and something else you should know about. I pulled out another document from my bag, the real bombshell I found in the metal box. This is a trust document dated 1975. Grandma Rose put the entire property in a conservation trust. The mineral rights, the water rights, everything. None of us actually own this land. We're just stewards. It can never be sold or developed. Marie snatched the paper, her hands shaking as she read. This isn't possible. The title search didn't show any trust. Because Grandma never registered it, I explained. She kept it in reserve, protecting it until it was needed. As executor, my first official act was filing it with the county this morning. It's public record now. You can't do this, Thomas shouted. We'll sue. Go ahead, I said calmly. The trust is ironclad. I had it reviewed by 3 different lawyers. You can't break it without proving Grandma was incompetent when she created it in 1975. Good luck with that. They left in a fury of threats and slammed car doors. But I knew we hadn't heard the last of them. The next few months were a blur of legal maneuvers. My cousins tried everything, challenging the trust, claiming fraud, even suggesting I had forged the diary. But Grandma Rose had been thorough. The trust document had been witnessed by a judge who was still alive and remembered her clearly. The diary's age was confirmed by multiple experts. Then came the final revelation, the one that broke their resolve completely. I was cleaning out Grandma's bedroom when I found another diary, this one hidden in a false bottom of her jewelry box. It contained yearly records of profit sharing, small but regular payments she'd been making to various local charities from the limited gold extraction she permitted on the property. The land provides, she'd written, not for greed, but for need. The gold isn't meant to make anyone rich, it's meant to help our community thrive. The documents showed decades of quiet philanthropy, scholarships for local kids, emergency funds for farmers during drought years, medical bills paid anonymously, all funded by small, sustainable gold extraction that never interfered with the farm's primary purpose. When this evidence became public, my cousins' support in the community evaporated. They'd been painting themselves as victims of a scheming grandmother and a manipulative cousin. Instead, they were exposed as the greedy relatives who wanted to destroy a generations-long legacy of community service. The court case ended with a whimper, not a bang. They withdrew their challenges, accepting a small annual stipend from the trust in exchange for signing away any future claims. That was a year ago. The farm is thriving now, managed under the trust's guidelines. We still grow apples, organic, heirloom varieties that sell for premium prices at farmers' markets. The limited gold extraction continues, funding scholarships and community projects just as Grandma intended. The aquifer turned out to be her greatest gift. As water becomes increasingly precious, the trust ensures it will always belong to the community, protected from corporate interests and development. I live in Grandma's house now, sleeping in my old summer bedroom. The kitchen still smells like lavender, and sometimes, when I'm rocking in her old chair, I swear I can hear her laughing. Last week, I found another diary entry I'd missed before, dated just months before she died. Hannah will find this when she's ready. She'll understand why I chose her, not because she loved the farm the most, but because she loved it for the right reasons. Money comes and goes, but land endures. The real treasure isn't the gold in the ground or the water in the springs. It's the knowledge that this place will continue to serve and sustain, long after we're gone. She was right, of course. My cousins saw only the potential profit, the quick payoff. They never understood that the real wealth of this land isn't in what you can take from it, but in what it gives back when you tend it with love and respect. The apple orchard is blooming now, white petals drifting like snow in the spring breeze. I'm teaching my goddaughter how to tell when the fruit will be ready, just as Grandma taught me. She's only 6, but she already loves the farm stories, especially the one about her great-great-grandma Rose, who was clever enough to protect this land for generations to come. My cousins don't visit anymore, which is probably for the best. But their children do, drawn by the same magic that captured me during those childhood summers. I welcome them, share Grandma's stories, teach them about the land. After all, they're part of this legacy too, even if their parents forgot what that really means. Sometimes, walking the North Field where that first gold discovery was made, I think about how greed nearly destroyed this place. But then I remember Grandma's words. The land has secrets, Hannah. Some of them even I don't know yet. She was right about that too. Every season brings new discoveries, not of gold or water, but of the quiet magic that happens when you honor the past while protecting the future. And that's a treasure worth more than all the gold in the world.